This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another response to an AskProfWolff question from our Patreon community. And this one comes from Fiacre Bisset. My hope is I have pronounced that correctly. Fiacre Bisset asks, what is this association of the word populist or populism on the one hand and fascism on the other? Are populists more or less of the left, of the right? What's going on, and why are they so often denounced? It's a great question, and it's particularly important now because the word populism, having been out of fashion for a long time, has come back in. One of the reasons for that is that there's a kind of broad-based social anger, bitterness, even disgust at conventional party politics. People who were once comfortable being conservatives or liberals or Democrats or Republicans are mighty displeased with the old establishments of these long-lasting parties. And they are looking for fresh, new faces. And if those fresh, new faces arise, as they often do, then there are movements of people who are getting involved in politics in a way they haven't for quite a while, in the hope that this involvement will be a refreshment of politics, so it refers and responds more to what people want. And when you have that rush of people renewing their involvement or being involved for the first time into politics, it's often referred to as populism, because the people are getting back into the political process rather than leaving it to the professional politicians, which was going on for quite a while until recently. As to the political complexion, most of the time populism of whatever sort involves people who are arriving with a more or less left-wing perspective. They're critical of capitalism. They're interested in socialism of one kind or another. They want democracy, things like that. But there are also people who come from the right with a politically right-wing notion. They want to throw the politicians out and have various kinds of direct democracy, or they have some dramatic new leader, and the people want to bring this new leader in and sweep away all of the old established politics. So Donald Trump gets called a populist. He's that last kind, a dramatic leader who says he will represent the mass of people, throwing out, what was his phrase, draining the swamp, throwing out the old establishment and bringing in the fresh reality of people's involvement. And on the other hand, you had Bernie Sanders, a traditional socialist, who also wanted to clean out the old establishments and bring in the fresh perspective of an idea that says we can do better than capitalism. So what happens here is then predictable. As your question shows, you're aware that the centrists, the old establishments, they don't like populism. They don't even want the mass of people all that involved. They have their political parties. Each of them has their bureaucracy. They have their orderly movement of people from the lower level to the higher level. It's a professionalized, bureaucratic management of political life. So in this country, for example, Mitch McConnell of the Republicans, Nancy Pelosi of the Democrats, they sit at the pinnacle of a professional political machine. And Mr. Trump disrupted that from the right with his populism, and Mr. Sanders from the left with his. In some cases, you have a movement that literally mingles them together. For example, in France, for the last couple of years, there's been something called the Yellow Vest movement. And that's been a movement of people, city by city, town by town, all across France, in which left-wingers and right-wingers mingle, argue with each other, but get together, wear the vests, and protest the old political establishment. But those establishments do not sit by quietly and watch. This is a threat to their power, to their positions, to their entrenched positions. So they basically view it as a disaster either way. They don't like the left version and they don't like the right version. They want them both to go away. And nothing is more appealing than to hit them with some dismissive label. So here's one, extremist, or here's another, radical, or here's another, populist, in which the word gets used as a curse word, as a put down, as a pejorative, populism. And then you associate populism with something that you can stick on both the left and right. So, for example, very popular for at least a century, calling populists anti-Semitic, finding examples where the right-wing populists say something anti-Semitic, some of them, and left-wing say something which either is anti-Semitic or can be represented as anti-Semitic, and then you can get the society as a whole to dismiss populism by guilt by association. That instead of saying that's this group within that's saying this, it becomes the whole group. Or they're subversive, or they don't respect the flag, or whatever can be brought up. The center can be counted on politically to attack populisms of left or right. The right populisms are where you get the notion of fascism, because what has happened is that those movements that are fascistic, that really want to have a dictatorship, that want to crunch down on the society and regiment everything and bring the government to be the support for the big corporations, the way Mussolini organized things in Italy, or Hitler in Germany, or Franco in Spain. This kind of movement claims to be populist. It's really not so much that they are bringing masses of people in, but they would like to get a broad support. And if they take advantage of disaffection with the machines that run politics, they can capture the populist impulse and line it up behind fascism. And folks on the left, socialists and communists, have done more or less the same from their side with a different set of objectives. It doesn't mean that communists and fascists are alike because they do similar kinds of strategic decisions. It's because their different goals need mass support, and so they will move in a populist direction when that opportunity arises. So populism isn't intrinsically left or right. It's both. It's a scene, a site where the struggle between left and right goes on, and one or the other may win that struggle, and then populism becomes more one or the other, but that's always the outcome of a struggle. There's no intrinsic thing about populism that makes it right or left or somewhere in between. In hopes that this has responded to your question, thank you for sending it. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.